Hey, what is up? I am the Dharma Guy. You're here on Dharma Time. And as always, my co host here is the Dope Doctor. Let's bring him up. What's up, man? How is ya?
Hola. I'm doing fantastic, man.
We are still under a pseudo quarantine, I guess.
Sir.
We are in Florida, and it seems like every day they're dropping some sort of a restriction. I know that I think early this week, I think bars were open. I'm not sure. I know gyms started opening. What else? They were
Just about
easing up.
everything.
Yeah, they're easing up on a lot of the restrictions.
I mean, with regulations, but yeah, just about everything.
Yeah, man. I'm still kind of adhering the best I can. I'm on that point now where I'm trying to contemplate, what I could or couldn't do, or what I should or shouldn't do. My wife is still home on telework for her job. We're able to do this obviously, so I don't really have to go out other than supplies and food.
Uh,
But I want to start getting back into the gym. I want to start kind of seeing what life is going to look like again. So I think we're all kind of in that moment of trying to figure out what's worth it, what's not worth it, what we can and can't do, that kind of stuff. And for all of you guys watching, I'm pretty sure you're going through very similar circumstances, and so just to let you know, you're not alone. But
you don't look like you've missed the gym.
oh yeah, well, that's because it's from the chest up right now. But anyway, so let's go ahead and jump into it. Well, first and foremost, as you can see behind the Dope Doctor's head there, that's the Now Matters More Foundation, of which I'm the president. He is the founder. We, of course, help individuals who are struggling with the disease of addiction. They don't know who to call. They don't know how to get help. Maybe there's a financial barrier. Who knows? You got questions? Give us a call. 833 Now Matters. That's 833 Now Matters. Or, as always, you can go to nowmattersmore.org and you can fill out an application if you need help. Or you can also hit that little donate button, show us your support, and then just check out who we are and what we're about. And
Right.
plenty of good help on there and resources and whatnot. So, by all means, that's why we do what we do.
Yep.
Speaking of do what we do, so I was on Facebook. I think it was yesterday or the day before, just scrolling down, looking for inspiration, if you will. And
That just sounds funny.
hey, that's where I figure out my topics, man.
Is it?
Yeah, I usually scroll through, and if I see a preponderance of people commenting
Oh,
about certain
a
things,
what? Look at that! You even
um,
blew up the
yeah,
whole
I
whatever
just
you
ripped
just
out
did
my
right.
my earpiece there.
Well, that's because you used such a big word, preponderance.
That's right. Anyways, no, but if I'm scrolling through and I see just a ton of people talking about certain things, left and right, then obviously that seems to be kind of the vibe of the people, if you will. So I try to address it, and so I saw a few people posting about this, and I've heard it asked numerous times. I've been in this debate numerous times. Matter of fact, I think a couple of our listeners have actually private messaged me about this very same thing.
Yeah.
And that is, if once again, this is a show about spirituality. I come from a Buddhist perspective, so obviously that's the spin I try to put on things. And Buddhism, not a lot of people know about it. A lot of people think they know about it from what they've heard. I know myself, I thought I knew a lot about it until I started getting further into it, and I realized I had a lot of misconceptions. Mainly
Yeah.
because everything I thought I knew about it I based upon what I heard, like movies,
Yeah.
TV shows, other people talking about it, and for whatever reason, I just took that at face value, thinking, "Oh, okay, that's what it's about." And one of the common misconceptions a lot of people have when it comes to that particular philosophy is that you have to be some sort of like a detached, emotional like robot. Like you can't have dreams, you can't have aspirations.
Wow.
It is called the middle path, right? Like you don't want to get too high, you don't want to get too low. You try to kind of stay as some people like to call it Zen. And for them, what that means is no emotions. No extremes, no aspirations, no goals, no.
God, it sounds boring.
It does when you put it that way, right? And I battled that myself early on, not necessarily from my own practice,
Yeah.
but trying to answer those questions to other people, right? Like I understood it, but it was hard for me to pontificate about it. And so that's right, baby. I chose that one specifically because I knew you were going to have a reaction. But anyway, no, I struggled at first trying to explain to people the difference, right? The difference between detachment and indifference, right? Because I think there
Right.
is a difference.
That sounds weird.
Yeah. But I think there is a difference between indifference and detachment. Detachment, to me, anyways, I still have goals, I still have hopes, I still have dreams, I still have aspirations.
Yeah.
The difference, though, where I'm at now, is my happiness is no longer detached to, or excuse me, attached to those things.
Right.
Meaning, there was a time in my life, if I wasn't achieving certain goals, then I wasn't happy. I was upset. I was angry. I was pissed off about things or whatever it may be because these goals or these achievements weren't done. And I connected the two of those 100%, right?
Right.
And even I've had to answer the question oftentimes when it comes to burnout, even doing groups and stuff, where people would say, hey, how do you not get burnt out when all these people are maybe not following advice or whatever, they're relapsing? Or I've
Hmm.
had in my fitness company, people just aren't losing weight or, whatever the case may be. And I told him for me, it was pretty simple, especially once I got into my spiritual practice. I'm not indifferent to the outcome of what they're doing, but I realize I can't control the outcome. All I can control is my input. And so for me, that is where kind of I draw the line, I want the best for everybody, but I'm not in control of what they do. I'm in control of making sure I give my best to the situation, and whatever happens from there is what was meant to be, kind of a thing.
Right.
And so that's what's made it kind of easy for me to walk down this path of the way we help people. Not to say that it doesn't get frustrating at times when we see people not utilizing the help in ways that we think that they would most benefit from it.
Right.
But it keeps me from losing my mind. You know what I mean? It keeps me from just going crazy and getting angry or frustrated, because it wasn't meant to be. It just wasn't where it's at. And even that, to be honest with you, I've had conversations with people that they feel that that's a little too detached for their liking, I guess. So I guess for me, the start there, right, is just the difference between indifference and detachment. Do you see a difference between the two?
God, I can't believe we're using words like indifference and detachment.
Do you think there's a difference between not liking stuff and not caring?
Let me take another sip there, Trini.
There you go. Simon just while you're
Uh,
doing that, Simon just he said input and perception of reaction to events.
there's someone else that talks like you.
There you go.
That's awesome, Simon. Here's what I would say so far on everything that you talked about. As far as detachment, um, when I think of being detached, I think about just not allowing someone else to like push your button.
Right.
That's where my mind initially goes. It just
Sure.
goes to like when you're younger, um, every emotion is either based on something primal inside you, like hunger, pain,
Mm-hmm.
and then you start attaching yourself to individuals, mommy, daddy, brother, sister, things like that, and then on, right? Best friends, blah
Yep.
blah blah, other people. And I think that at some point in that whole growth period, where you're trying to figure it all out, you can either continue that attachment and allow other people to just move you completely to one feeling state to another feeling state, or you could start learning how to understand that you're really responsible for how much your feeling state changes based on those relationships, and what kind of value you put on those relationships. And so early on, I had a lot of attachment issues that weren't present because I moved a lot. I come from a
Right.
military family, right? So we moved around every, through 2 to 3 years. You're moving to another place. You have totally different friends. You live in a different city, and so I've learned to detach very easily. And hey, bye bye, never see you again, kind of deal. So that was just the whole upbringing. So being attached to things, what I found for me was more of the nostalgia. So because you also just had like one box that you packed up, right? Like you opened one drawer, you put everything, all your toys that you really liked in that one drawer. But if you missed it, my mom was very good. If you didn't play with it or you missed it, it's gone, and you won't know what happened to it. You're just like, what happened to that one thing? My mom doesn't hold on to anything. My mom is
Right.
complete opposite of a hoarder. She's constantly recycling even things that you do use and upgrading them.
Sure.
So when I think of that word detachment, I think I was naturally set to be able to
Sure.
detach. But when I started attaching, it was mainly out of having some sort of void inside me that I didn't understand. And so at first I looked to fill that void through people or objects or things, right? And then when that became too painful, it wasn't working, I came back to the root, which is, all right, really, I need to be able to make my own self happy, and I need to just embrace what's around me. Because at the end of the day, every time I came home or came back to home base, I felt the most comfortable. So,
Yeah, actually, I want to touch on that real quick. The first point you made, and that was because I too, based upon my upbringing, it was easy for me to detach emotionally from things. However, I think the difference between that detachment and the detachment that this particular spirituality calls for is
okay,
one wasn't a choice and one was.
okay,
Right, like my reaction to my upbringing or the things I witnessed or saw was detachment is more of a like a coping skill, is more of a like a protection type thing. Like I'm going to detach from this situation because I'm not going to get hurt by having these things come in and out of my life or whatever. And it was more of a emotional response to what was taking
right,
place. To
right,
whereas the detachment that this spiritual practice gives me is a choice. I'm choosing to detach myself from a specific outcome, right? And to me, that's where I see the difference. And for a lot of people watching this, I think that's where the difference kind of resides a little bit for most of us.
What do you
So,
mean by a specific outcome?
like, okay, if I set a goal for myself, be it financially, be it personally, be it whatever that goal is, I want that goal to happen. I'm going to work towards it happening.
Yeah,
But if it doesn't happen, I'm going to still be happy as a person, meaning I'm detached from that outcome. If that outcome doesn't take place the way I wanted it to go, I'll be
right,
disappointed,
right.
but I'll still wake up tomorrow and I'll still kind of go through my day. Like I won't be devastated. And that to me is where the spiritual concept comes in. And that's what I try to explain to people actually about the detachment. So when that person who I'm talking to tells me, or the person you're talking to, because I promise you, if you start to dig in, and not you personally, obviously, but anybody's watching this, if you start to dig into this spirituality, first and foremost, you're going to find out there's a lot of experts out there that know everything about Buddhism, and they don't. And then the second thing you're going to find out is a lot of these supposed experts are going to sit down and start to tell you their opinions on it, and several of those opinions are going to revolve around, oh, well, I don't want to be detached. It's a boring way of life, and that couldn't be further from the truth. That is not how this. I have emotions. I get high. Just ask my wife, man. I get happy. I get upset. The difference though is when it comes to detachment, anyways, is I choose kind of how to respond to things. We did a show a while back called Response versus Reaction, and that's kind of what I
Yeah,
mean. Like I
right.
choose a response now as opposed to just reacting. And part of that is because I'm no longer attached to any specific outcome, if that makes sense.
I mean,
Simon,
but me not being a Buddhist, I mean, I just
yeah,
think of it very differently as in regards to
sure.
the words I would use about that. To me, that's just basic maturity.
Um,
When you don't allow the outcomes to change
sure.
your path or your emotions.
Simon just commented again. I'm gonna put this one actually on the feed for everybody.
Sure. Now, I'm
He
guessing
says,
the Buddhist. That's why he's using.
well, he wasn't actually.
No?
I don't know how he identifies, but I know him and we're friends, and I've talked to him in the past, and I know I've at least been part way introduction into Buddhism for him, and he kind of took
Oh,
his own path. Anyways, he says the thoughts, emotions, and reactions still arise, but you see, you don't have to let it flow in that direction. Detachment is not being tied into a single result or reaction, and difference is ignoring or not caring about the results. And yeah, I would agree.
now
That would be the difference.
yeah, that sounds very Webster. Yeah,
Yeah,
sounds about
he's a
right.
Webster kind of guy.
That sounds very Webster.
But yeah, so for me, that's kind of where I sit, right? That's what. So when people hear detachment, oftentimes they think indifference, and those are two different things.
Yeah, I never think of those two words. So that's what I'm saying.
Sure.
In a very plain sense, or even in counseling people, I don't even use those words.
Right.
But you know what, Trinity, that my whole ideology of when you're helping people is I learned how to communicate in a very I guess the way a friend would or the
Right.
way a confidant would, because when I was in school and I learned about Buddhism in college. That's where I was, you know, where I got my first introduction to it, and it was still highbrow. Everything is highbrow, and the words used are highbrow.
Right.
And so what I found is when I use like psychobabble, and in this case I would call it, like spiritual babble or Buddhist babble. Maybe I'll call it Buddhist babble. then it's like there's a detachment from
Right.
how another human being just actually uses it in their everyday lives. So one of the things that I like about you and our conversations that we've had is, even though you use these words, you break it down and just talk like a normal person as
Right.
well. Just like if I'm talking about medical stuff with addiction or something like that, I break it down and talk like a regular old
Sure.
person.
Yeah, yeah. And so, but that was one of the
So
biggest
can you do
things.
that now with this detachment thing?
Sure. Well, I mean, I think that's what we're doing, right? Is
We're doing.
just trying to make sure that people understand that the first and foremost, if you're searching for inner peace, if you're searching for happiness, if you're searching for that, I'm good, man. Part of that comes from detaching yourself from specific outcomes, right? Detaching yourself from, hey, it's got to go this way, right?
Let that go.
There's a difference between wanting something and having to have something. I want all sorts of things in my life. I want all sorts of accomplishments and goals and relationships and all, the whole laundry list. I want all sorts of things, but I don't have to have them in order
You know
for me
what?
to find happiness.
I'll pause you right there.
Yeah,
Actually, I think that's what leads to a lot of my peace now. Is um, I can't think of a whole heck of a lot that I want.
right,
Um, and that's really kind of weird when I think of it. You know, when I put
right,
my mind actually on it, go like, all right, if I had to put a list of what I want, like, what do I want? I kind of have what I want.
sure,
I mean, you can always improve a little bit. You know, you can just get it. Just if you like this automobile, maybe you want one that's 1 year newer. You know,
sure,
whatever, or brand new tires on it. But it's stuff like that. It's very minimal.
sure.
It's nothing major. So maybe that's why I'm so peaceful and so calm.
Well, technically speaking, that is kind of what happiness is, right? I mean, once again, we did a show on that a while back too. Is people confuse happiness oftentimes with pleasure, but it's not.
Right.
Happiness is more along the lines of contentment, where I'm just good, right? Like things could be different, but I'm all right.
I love Simon already. Yes, Simon.
Simon said, "Would cling or thirst be better?"
Yeah.
Basic layman words. Yeah,
I, I think that's perfect. I think people do get real clingy, or they get real thirsty,
yeah,
and they'll do anything to get it. You
yeah,
know what I mean? Or they cling on to things and they don't let them go, and they attach all kinds of emotions to something that's inanimate or not even real,
sure,
and then so when they don't have it, they freak out, and or it causes them some sort of stress. Now that stress, like, we all have it, but what you do with it is, it could be the problematic thing, right? Like what
yeah.
you do
Well,
with that particular
that's
stress.
literally the definition of the second truth, right? The second truth in the Four Noble Truths is you cause your own suffering through your aversion to the bad and the clinging to the good.
See,
And
I'm a
that's
wise man, didn't even know it.
so essentially that's what we're talking about, right? Like I'm trying not to cause myself suffering, so therefore I'm not clinging to specific things or outcomes. At the end of the day, like our friend Bruce Lee says, be like water.
Be like,
Water flow, water crash. Well, we got to do the same thing. If you're too obstinate in your approach, if you're so strong-willed and thinking that it has to be this way, or I have to get this, or this person has to do that, you're gonna be awfully upset and pissed off a lot of your life.
yeah,
The one thing I tried to tell my teenage daughter the other day when she came up with this big elaborate plan of everything she's gonna do 2-3 years from now, and as an adult listening to it, of course I saw flaws in it immediately. But instead, what I told her was like, look, that's great that you have a plan. That's awesome, and I'm proud of you. However, don't get devastated if you find out life has other plans.
right,
And that's
right,
the thing that we have to understand is life doesn't always care what your plans are, man. Like it's great to have plans, but don't confuse plans with actuality. I guess all a plan really is a hope, right? Like you're hoping things are going to go this way. You don't actually have control over a lot of things in our lives. We don't have control if there is a tomorrow or not. Right? I mean, we can end one, I guess, but we can't guarantee that there will be one.
It's also a direction. It's a basic direction. I mean,
Yeah.
there's north, northeast, west, and south. I mean, so part of the plan is, which way are you at least going to walk? I mean,
Right.
when you're heading south and when you're heading north,
Yeah.
or at least moving. Just at least move.
And
You know?
Enrique popped in too. And Enrique, I'm gonna put this one on there too because he's always got some good words there.
Yep.
Enrique says, "I think most individuals confuse the detachment with not caring, but unhealthy attachment or depending on an outcome is like setting yourself up for disappointment." Which, yeah, I think that's kind of what we're getting at here. It's just a simple fact, man. If you're trying to find inner peace, you're gonna have to learn how to let some things go, and letting things go isn't always just like ignoring the person who's upsetting you at the moment or whatever. Sometimes letting go is letting go of your definition of success. Sometimes letting go is letting go of your definition of right or wrong or what's supposed to happen and things of that nature. And I think that, to me, is the crux of what we're talking about here. That's what I try to get people to understand when I say detachment. There's an unhealthy detachment that I think needs to be worked on, and some individuals have it more than others. I know I did. I had an unhealthy detachment in my life, meaning I was afraid to get close to people because of fear of injury or hurt, things of that nature. That's an unhealthy detachment. Yes, it was great for surviving my childhood years and getting through things, but as I got older, that's not how you develop healthy, long-lasting, intimate relationships with people, by being detached. That is not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is the choice that I make every day to allow things to unfold the way they were meant to unfold and accept them for what they are, not what I want them to be.
Desiderata. See?
Exactly.
No.
El Chupacabra, man. That's, yeah.
No, it's a desiderata. Whatever. Look, I think when it's problematic, in the way you're saying it, detachment and all that stuff, I think is when when it's an ineffective coping skill. One thing is when you use it as a coping skill and it becomes ineffective, then what's going to happen is you're not going to connect with other people. You're not going to allow yourself to be vulnerable. You're not going to allow yourself to be natural. You're not going to allow yourself to be accepting of someone else's life, really. And when you're part of someone else's life, you're going to have a natural ebb and flow of emotions based on what's happening to them. Yep. If they're in a little bit of pain and they're a little bit of suffering, you're going to feel some of that, and that's all right. Yeah. I think it's very human to be able to meander just a little bit in your emotions based on someone else's. So I think that when early on when you were talking about detachment, it sounded very cold. I said, yeah, it sounds very cold if you reach that Zen moment, maybe. You know what I mean? Right. They never paint Zen Buddhists to be very open people that you'd want to have a conversation with. These aren't the kind of guys that seem like you want to have at your barbecue and chill with. You know what I mean?
Well, and I think that's part of the problem, right? Like if we're not to get sidetracked, but as a practicing Buddhist, that is part of the problem, and that's one of the things I do my best to do is dispel some of these misconceptions, right? Like they do have this thing where like all Zen Buddhists are these assholes who speak in riddles that you're like, what are you talking about? They have, I know my idea of Buddhism was just basically old Asian men picking up grasshoppers in the street. Like, that's what I thought. Like, don't step on the ants, everybody. Like that's what I was led to believe. That's what I envisioned. That's the idea I had in my mind. Was in order to be a Buddhist, you had to basically be Middle East, or not Middle East. You had to be of Oriental descent, or you had to, you had to be a monk or something.
Oriental.
Yeah, pick a
country. Very 70s word.
What else you want to call it? Because it's not necessarily Chinese, but
Asian.
Sure.
Well, I learned it in college, and in college, my professor was a white guy that did it, and he had a very chill about it. I really liked it. He actually made it very interesting.
Simon says they need a marketing guru. They do, actually.
Yeah, that's true. And I like the way this professor described it, talked about it. Eastern Western Humanities were some cool courses. I would advise anyone to take those courses. They're very interesting. But when they did it, it sounded more like you couldn't call anything what it is, right? Because you had all kinds of these little things like, what is that? And you'd say, it's a chair. He goes, stupid. He goes, it is what it is. Like it's not a chair. Like so it's those simple things like, man, you're taking everything a little too literal. You're going a little overboard. And I think anyone can do that, right? I mean, we have big book thumpers in 12-step meetings. You have Bible thumpers in spiritual groups. Same thing, I'm sure, in Buddhist groups. You have your version of Bible thumpers, in Buddhist programs, I'm sure. But
we actually did a show called "Spirituality is Not a Competition," because of that very thing.
There you go. I don't know anybody that's a Siddhartha thumper, but maybe there are some Siddhartha thumpers.
Yep.
But the point is that if you take yourself too serious and you take all these concepts way too serious to the point where you lose the ability to like I say, how you were talking about the water, you lose the ability to adapt to the circumstance or to the person you're communicating with or the person that may need you right now. May need you to just be a little bit more friendly in your eyes, because some people are really, stoic or flat in their expression all the time.
Sure.
And those people that have that kind of flat affect, to me, make it very difficult to just be human with,
Right.
you know. And I don't know about you, but I just prefer humans around me rather than robots. I mean,
Sure.
we'll get there, but I'm just not there right now.
Yeah.
Maybe
And
that's Zen. Zen is robots.
it
I'm
doesn't
not
have to
Zen.
be. No, because like for instance, there's a very famous Zen Buddhist that I know of, that I think most people know of. I don't know if they know he's Zen or not, but Phil Jackson, the coach of the old coach of the Bulls and the
Yeah,
Lakers.
he's cool.
He
I
was
just thought he smoked so much pot that he just,
no, he was a
everything was F it.
Zen Buddhist actually, and he matter of fact, they covered some of this in that Last Dance thing that they were doing on ESPN. He actually brought in certain Buddhist principles and some yoga, things of that nature, into the teams that he coached. And that's one of the reasons why he's so revered, man. Is just his presence, the way he kind of conducted himself, and a lot of his philosophies are based on Zen Buddhism.
Yeah.
But that's the thing. When I say Zen Buddhist, most people don't think Phil Jackson. They think
No.
they think bald guy in a robe somewhere. And much in the same way when we talk about detachment, and yes, it can be easy to confuse the two, right? Like if the only access you have to Buddhism is the dude in the robe, meditating for 12 hours a day, it's very easy to think, I don't want that lifestyle, right? Like I don't want to sit in a monastery for 12
Wait, wait,
hours.
wait, 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 wait. During COVID-19, that was my lifestyle. I was a dude in the robe,
There
not
you
doing
go.
anything for 12
There you go.
hours. So maybe I'm a Zen Buddhist,
You
Trinity.
are now apparently.
I am now.
But yeah, so it's easy to kind of get that misconception, right? Like, because they do, for whatever reason, I don't know why. Maybe they do have to have a marketing guru, Simon. They push it as this like mystique kind of like, I don't know, this weird kind of, I don't know the words I'm thinking of at the moment, but they do push it as this weird kind of thing that is very abstract. And it really truly isn't. It's very simple. It's not easy,
Well,
but it's very
it's just
simple.
a non-human connected. It's a person that's very connected to the inner workings of their mind, so it doesn't move based on outside circumstances or outside stimuli.
Sure.
But they're in doing that, you're disconnected from other human beings, is what it appears to be. Now, I like the way you are detached because you have your moments where we're responding to something. You go, whatever. And sometimes maybe you need that. You need a little bit more than, yeah, whatever. And I think you've experienced where someone maybe asks you for a little bit more than, yeah, whatever. And so you have to do it.
Sure.
Based on your relationship with that individual and where you want that relationship to go, whether you want it to go into an argument or whether you want it to be satisfactory or whether you want it to be productive. You have to go from, yeah, whatever to, well, okay, I can see your point. And then you start negotiating. Right. You start internally negotiating. How far can I get into attaching myself to this situation so that we can connect and maybe move forward from here?
Yeah. And Simon decided to touch on your chair analogy, by the way. He said, for the chair, consider materials used, where it's from, the craftsmen that are working on it, the delivery, other differences between types of decorative features of chairs. Just a name for it, but it provides comfort, place to relax, more than just a named chair. He's essentially what he's talking about is dependent origination, meaning nothing is what it is. It started as
Is
something
that what
else.
he's talking about?
Yeah, that's the philosophy. Or that would be the what did you call it? The Buddhist what? The
Buddhist babble.
Yeah, the Buddhist babble. So, but anyways, my
Buddha
thing
babble.
is just trying to tell people what detachment really is and how it's beneficial, right? And so, detachment to me has been it was a hard thing to achieve in my life, and I'm skillful in certain areas. I'm not perfect. I'm not this pillar of perfection walking around and I do it my way. But I've made leaps and bounds from where I used to be, because I did allow things to move my needle all over the place. I was a very passionate, very emotional person. Typically, those emotions would come off in either severe aggression or competitiveness, or rage and anger. Those were kind of my hot buttons. That's where I would go. And I thought that I did, but I didn't really have much control over those things. It was more or less, it was easy to gauge what was happening in my life depending on my, how I talk to you, like my cadence and things of that nature. You could tell right away, he's not really feeling good. And at certain moments, you probably still can. But
I know when you're not feeling good.
Well, I'll usually tell you. I'll flat out be like, I'm pissed right now. But anyways, so for me, it was a positive in the sense of it's a very non-peaceful existence when you're constantly running from one fire to the next, putting them out. When the needle's being moved all over the place by something else, it's hard to have that sense of stillness, if you will.
Right.
The word I would use that I never would have used in my life before until I received it is peace. Like, you're not
Right.
at peace when you're constantly being pushed around by your emotions or your thoughts or your expectations. Then there is no peace. It's just nothing but turmoil, and that turmoil comes out in all sorts of different ways. But
Right.
when you learn to finally just accept it for what it is, I cannot put into words the amount of peace that you get from that,
Right.
and how good that feels. And it's not indifference, because I'm very much passionate and very much caring about the people in my life, and the things in my life, and my goals and aspirations. But either way, I'm good, and that, to me, is the point of indifference, or excuse me, of detachment. Is just this: I'm good. Like, no matter what happens, I'm good. I'll figure it out. I'll react to it. I'll respond to it. I'll be okay. And I think that is what we're aiming for. We're not aiming for the I don't really care. It doesn't matter to me. Because at the end of the day, that's bullshit anyways, right? Like, whenever someone says I don't care, they typically do one way or the other. I don't care is just an easy way, it's an easy way to shut people up around you, or it's an easy way to get a little passive aggressive stab in. Like, I don't really care anyway. Yeah, you do. But so to me, that would be the difference, right? And that is what I think we should strive for, because it is that clinging, this constant clinging to this specific outcome that causes us our suffering. Because at the end of the day, you really can't control that outcome anyways. All you can control is the effort you put into it. And that's a hard lesson for a lot of people to learn. It was hard for me to learn. I thought
Right.
I could will myself to damn near anything I wanted to, and it took me like it was. I had to go through some humbling moments before I realized I'm just a passenger, man. Like,
Right.
no matter how much I think I'm a driver, no, I'm not. The
Well, I
only
think
thing
it's
I'm driving is my responses.
and well, that's a perfect segue to where I was in my headspace with that was like if you're flowing down a river, like going back to the flow.
Yep.
Look, energy moves whether you want it to or not, but you can try to stop it or try to end that flow. And like sometimes there's branches or things hanging into the river. Now, if you try to grab that and hold on to that branch, but the river's going, that's hard to hold on to. But so many people do that in their life, right? Something may happen within their life, or some sort of issue is present at the current moment. So you grab onto a branch while you're going down this river and you're holding on to it. But the flow of life, the flow of progress is trying to push you along, but you're holding on to that thing. And sometimes you just have to let go. Let the river kind of take you. Like if you've ever gone river rafting, you've gone river
Yeah.
rafting, right?
Yeah.
All right. What do they tell you to do if you fall into the water?
You get your life preserved.
Well, you already have it. Well, they tell you to just let it
Yeah,
go.
let go of the
Right,
flow.
just float up. Yeah, let it just go with the water, and then you're eventually going to go somewhere where you can go. But you don't try to fight it, right? If you try to fight it or try to do some things, you're gonna get hurt. So you kind of have to let the water. You kind of just go with the water. That is life to me. It's a very turbulent, rough. Sometimes there's rapids and there's rocks and there's all kinds of things. So just lay on your back, just kind of go on your back and just kind of go, and then eventually it's going to calm. Even in the nastiest of treacherous of waters that you're rafting, there's little brief moments, or sometimes very long moments, of just still water and just peace, and it's just flowing naturally. That's the way I view kind of what you're saying.
Well, using that same analogy, Simon just said detachment is seeing but not needing to grab the branch. That's
There you
basically
go.
what we're getting at here,
There
which
you
is
go.
which is actually kind of funny, because it's interesting that you use the stream of life analogy there, because in our, how do I say this, in our I guess behaviors or whatever, our attachment to things and whatnot, that analogy is perfect, but that analogy is also perfect in the opposite sense when it comes to our brains, right? And what I mean by that is because it's actually been used, to be honest with you. That analogy is used a lot in Buddhism,
Okay.
but it's used in a different sense. And that sense is our normal stream of consciousness
Mm-hmm.
that we're used to will take us downstream. Like our normal kind of clinging, detachment, or excuse me, our clinging, our aversion, the suffering. It's normal behavior in our minds, and we're supposed to go against us, and we're supposed to fight some of that
Oh,
thinking.
really?
Yeah, we're supposed to fight that thinking, but the right amount of effort isn't to turn around and try to haul ass upstream. Instead, you swim like diagonally from side to side and inching your way forward, essentially,
Right.
because
Right.
my mind naturally, in your mind, in everybody's mind, it's a survival instinct. That's how we've stayed alive as a species.
Right.
We want to cling to things. We want to have an aversion towards things. Like,
Right.
if it feels good, I want more of it, and I want it to last forever. If it doesn't feel good, I don't ever want to experience that, and I want to push it away. But our inability to do that causes our suffering, so we have to stop trying to do that. But it's hard because that's our normal stream of consciousness, is just to do those things. And so that's why people say Buddhism is simple and it's not easy. It's simple because the concepts are hard to get. It's just not easy because it's very difficult to fight that normal stream of consciousness that we all have.
Right.
So it's interesting that the analogy works both ways depending on what we're talking about, right?
Well, I'm not salmon, so I'm not swimming upstream
Right.
or anything like that. But what about this, Trinity? What about detaching from the past you, your past self, the younger you, the less mature you? What about detaching from some of the emotions or thought patterns that you had back then, and just to allow natural progress or maturity or evolution to take place?
Yeah, I would say I see where you're going with that, and I agree with that.
Well, because there's so many people that just say that's just the way I am. Well,
Yeah.
the way I am, it can also be the way I was.
All right, now that I will hold
I'm not
on.
necessarily the way I am back then as now. You know what I mean?
I'll grab that one, and that one in the sense of yes, detach yourself from your ego, essentially, right? Detach yourself from how you see yourself. In other words, things that we think that we are, no, you're not. You just learn to do that. That's not who you are. That's who you learn to be. As far as the other one,
Or it was effective at the time for the moment.
Yeah.
Maybe during that particular crisis or that particular moment of your life, it was very valuable and useful, and it probably worked. But it's possible that some of those coping skills or things that you did back then are not necessarily as useful right now, and they could be counterproductive right now.
oh, I can guarantee you, my personal ones are absolutely. And yeah, I mean, detach yourself from who you think you are. Sometimes it definitely works. I will say though, on a side note, in case anybody wants to take that a little too far and try to kill a part of themselves, a very wise individual told me once that don't ever kill a part of yourself. Just love the new you so much, kind of a thing, right? In other words, like there's things I did in my past that I don't want to. It's not like I'll never say to myself, I don't want to be that person ever again, kind of a thing. No. I love who I am now so much that I'm going to continue to do things to keep where I'm at. So never kill a part of yourself.
I think both instances are actually the same, other than mindset.
Yeah.
Right. Other
Absolutely.
than that what you just said reminds me of the which one do you want to feed?
Yeah.
You know what I mean, kind of thing. Feed that dog or this dog.
Yep.
And the positive, because in psychology we do the same thing. It's like you don't tell somebody don't do this. You tell them what to do.
Yeah.
If you're gonna try to move a needle at all, you talk in the positive. You don't talk in the negative. What are you not gonna do this week? That's just But there's people that still do that.
Yeah.
Tell me you're never gonna use again. Tell me you're never gonna hurt me again. Tell me you're never gonna cheat again. It's
Absolutely.
let's just talk about what you are going to do, because that's a little bit more actionable. That's a little bit more measurable. That's a little bit more realistic. Because anybody gets that. Anybody and look, anybody who's ever done even a minute of a police car time is going to, I'll never do that again.
Sure. How many times as kids have we had that little prayer, man? Like, if you do this, I swear I'll never do this again.
Yeah. Good luck with making that actionable, measurable, and actually make it useful in your life. I'll never do that again. Yeah, but if you don't know what you're gonna do, and you don't know what drove you to do that in the first place, or what inspired you to do that in the first place, why the hell wouldn't you? That's like telling pull out a weed out of your yard and say, don't ever grow here again. Good luck with that.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? If you don't handle what's creating the growth of that weed in your soil in the first place, there will definitely be another weed growing out of that soil right there.
Of course, man. It's called self-growth.
It just happened.
Absolutely.
The idea is you got to pull the weeds. Not, how do I get rid of all weeds sprouting? No, you just pull them when they're young and they're tiny and they're easy to get.
So we're gardening next to a river is what we're doing right now.
All I know how to do is speak in analogies. Trinity, I don't know how to,
man. But we're usually using sports ones though.
Well, but don't get me started, because sports just started, man.
It's starting, I
saw NASCAR already. I saw a race already.
Okay. But that is an example of sports, right? Like a trivial example, but like you know what? I use games instead, right? That
Hmm.
we'll show the polar opposites here, like the complete
Huh.
differences.
Okay.
So when you and I started playing Destiny together,
Yeah.
you were very detached, right? Like meaning I
Right.
was giving you, hey, this, and this is going to
Yeah.
happen. You're probably going to get burnt out, whatever.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh,
Yeah.
I'm just, I like it because I'm just having fun playing a game, right?
Right.
And that is
Right.
the right mindset to have. It's absolutely the right mindset. That's the mindset that's going to bring you the most peace in this particular
Right.
situation.
Right.
Polar opposite of that, because you were detached from any specific outcome or any specific need or desire. You were just kind of letting it be what it is. If
Right.
it's successful, great. If it's not, hey, at least I had some fun playing.
Right.
Opposite of that, my now 9-year-old son is playing Fortnite, and he is very much attached to winning, or very much attached to getting his way, or however you want to define it. And when that doesn't happen, he, not as much anymore, but he would lose his little mind, man. He would rage out and get so mad, and even now I'll still hear him yelling sometimes and stuff. And while I can appreciate the competitiveness that he has
Right.
in him,
Is that your dog?
yes, it's my freaking stupid
Okay.
dog.
I'm sorry. I just go ahead. Go ahead with your point.
But anyways, so that's the
So does he break controllers?
he used to, not anymore, because I stopped buying them. Teachable moments, baby. But no, but that's an example, right? Like he would throw these little fits when he didn't get his way, and because he was so attached, so single-minded that this is the outcome. In order for me to feel any sort of benefit from this, it has to
Right.
turn out this way, and that to
Right.
me is what we do and what causes our suffering in life. Is in order for me to feel like this is a success, in order for me to
Right.
feel like this is worth my time, or this is good for me, or I like this, then it has to line up to these very specific expectations.
Right.
And if it doesn't, then I'm upset. It didn't work for me. Why even bother? I'm very apathetic at that point. And that to me is what I'm talking about. You are so attached to this specific outcome that it has to be this way or else. And
Right.
and that's what's going to cause suffering because you don't
Right. Right.
control that. And so
So
detaching yourself from those specific outcomes is what we're talking about. Come here, Rocky.
there you go. You started doing it right when I'm about to ask it. So what is the outcome that your dog is seeking that he's currently suffering because he's expecting a certain outcome. If I get this from my master, if I get this from Trinity, then I'll stop whining and moaning. What was it that he was searching for? Because you could have done it differently, and you had a teachable moment there. I mean, you could have been just stick your leg on him, right? Just your foot on him, and just pet him with your foot.
Yeah, no. Well, this is the worst dog to do. I don't know if anybody's ever owned a Jack Russell before. Don't. They have unending energy. They're nonstop, and he chases and barks at everything. His little rat terrier self wants to just chase and do whatever. So at the moment, there's my wife is out in the living room talking, either on her job or to her Skylar, and so he hears the commotion. He thinks he needs to be out there, and
Oh,
and so even if I would open the door, then he would hear me talking, and he would think he needs to be in here. That's just he's just nonstop, dude. It's
all right.
nonstop. Um, but
But
anyways,
you solved it by calling him. When you say "come here," he stopped.
I was just redirecting
Oh,
his attention.
right, right.
Yeah, and getting him to see. I was doing positive, reminding him what he does have, not what he doesn't have. Yes, you
Amen.
can't get out there, but you have an owner sitting right here that's willing to pay attention.
Yeah, yeah.
But anyways, no, I just I think we could probably do a whole show on myths and busting them. But that was one of the most important ones because I hear it so much, man, and I think that drives people away from getting further into the philosophy, because if that's the overall feeling or vibe that you think that it has to offer, who the hell in their right mind would want to do that? Like, no. And so I get it why a lot of people turn away from it. Like, I actually had these conversations numerous times with people. I remember very specifically when I would do my classes at Sleeping Moon.
Yeah.
I had some students in there that would be like, that they felt like it was too oppressive. They felt that like one of the ones I'm immediately popping in my head. She was saying to me like, I'm a Latina. I've got fiery attitude. I want to feel passion. I was like, you can still have that. Like, this isn't getting rid of that. It's just you're no longer allowing your sense of well being, your inner peace, to be dictated by your external passions. That's the
You know,
difference.
unfortunately, Buddhism is not as easy to spot as like Judaism or something like that. Like I don't know all the Buddhist celebrities to try to find out. Man, is there a fiery redhead or fiery Latina Buddhist out there? Like I don't know enough of them.
I don't
Hey,
know.
I just think Buddhist people. I just think, like you said, Phil Jackson, and I think Richard Gere.
Sting.
Past that, I don't have many more. Okay,
I
Sting.
actually looked up the list the other
I
day,
didn't,
but
I didn't even know that. Really? See,
yeah,
we got to do a show on that.
like who are Buddhist?
And,
Like,
and and then just talk about some of the qualities that are very that where you could spot that's very Buddhist in nature. You know what I mean? Because I think that would be a good way to kind of see it because we're very visual, right?
sure,
And we're very um, in our own mindsets of what we
right.
see, right? So we might define it differently. Like everything you talk about, like I don't put it in a the eightfold path and the truths and all that stuff. I put it in the terms that I know it to be, right?
Right.
Even though they may sync up, even though they may be equal, they may be the same. We
Right.
may think exactly alike, but you're going to say it differently based on your faith or belief system, and I'm going to say it a certain way. But if you give me a visual, then I start connecting the dots. So maybe we should do a show on
Yeah.
certain, like when you did the Phil Jackson thing, the Zen Buddhist. That was great. That was great.
Yeah.
Because that's how we learn how to attach maybe Zen Buddhism instead of Kung Fu, right? When we watch Kung Fu
Sure.
and David Carradine, and now I can picture
Wow. David Carradine, you just went way back. Nice.
well, I mean, not so far back for me,
It was
unfortunately.
still amount of time, man. But yeah.
Speaking of that, Eddie Haskell died.
Did he really?
That's
Yeah,
yeah.
we had quite a few deaths actually this last week.
Right.
Little Richard died.
Yes, he did.
King of rock and roll.
But a lot of people probably already thought Little Richard was dead. You know,
He was
well,
old.
because he's been around a long
Yeah,
time.
yeah.
So.
But anyways, that's why it was important to me, and because while I think that inner peace looks different for everybody,
Yeah.
inner peace doesn't have to mean that you're just sitting there Indian style meditating under a tree all day long. Like
Good.
if that's inner peace for you, then by all means go for it. But that doesn't necessarily imply that everybody does that. And there are, like for instance, we just kind of mentioned a couple names, but there are numerous celebrities. There are numerous very successful businessmen and businesswomen.
Yeah.
There's politicians. There's numerous people out there who are very successful in life who've reached what we would, which many people would aspire to be or to have, that are also practicing Buddhist. And so, by definition, you don't have to have this very passive way about you in order to be one.
Right.
That's just it's a myth. It really is.
Well, I vote that next week's show, that's what we talk about. We actually talk about celebrity Buddhists.
Yeah, I'm alright with that. I mean, it's kind of hard to confirm, I guess, but yeah. I mean, I can look up some list of.
What are we going to get sued because we called someone a Buddhist? It's like,
No, I'm just
how
saying.
dare you call him a Buddhist?
Hey, man. What can I say? I'm a very analytical individual. So my first thought was, how do you prove or disprove somebody is? There's no there's no secret handshake we all have, or some sort of medallion that we get in the mail. We don't have our little crosses.
Like a secret society.
That's right, man. We're the Freemasons.
Well, you may not have a little cross, but man, I see the Buddhist beads on people's arms all the time. But I think some of that is
fashion, too.
is Hollywood cool.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? So there's a lot of Hollywood cool going on.
And there's many people who don't subscribe to the philosophy of Buddhism who wear beads too.
Right.
And there's many that do, many that don't.
Well, yeah, I'm not Jewish, and I got this.
There you go.
Yeah, you know.
Well, I mean, I don't always wear beads around my wrist. I have them, but I don't always wear them.
Do they fit your wrist? I mean, what do you have to get, like a necklace and put it around your wrist?
No, I had one made though.
I believe it.
But no, I mean, I do have them. And for those who are wondering, we got a couple minutes left, so I'll say what those are actually.
Okay, yeah.
In theory, it's called a Buddhist mala, M-A-L-A. And
Bad?
What?
That means bad.
Well, it means
Mala.
bad in Spanish,
A bad girl.
but this-
you have a Buddhist bad girl. Now
Yeah.
you piqued my interest. Go
There you
ahead.
go. But no, it's called a Buddhist mala, and it's 100 and was it? Oh man, I think it's 108. I can't remember. It's either 108 or 103. I think it's 108. It's been a while since I've had to talk about that, but essentially, it's just the traditional one has. I'm going to say 108. If I'm wrong here, it's 103. By all means, correct me on here. But let's go with 108. There's 108 beads, and then you have like the master bead. And essentially, when you're meditating, you hold the master bead. You start at the master bead, and you basically go bead by bead until you get all the way back around. And in theory, the thought process behind it is there's 108 different kind of like, for lack of a better word, sins that you have to kind of deal with before you can reach enlightenment. That's where the number 108 comes from. It's basically just something to help you stay focused while you're meditating.
And so when you're doing it, so there's not a thought process. It's not like the rosary where you're doing a Hail Mary each time.
Mm-mm. Okay. No, it's just to help keep you focused on something. I mean, some people could. There are mantras and stuff that you can meditate to. Yeah. But it's not like it's not a requirement. The Buddhist police aren't going to come knocking down your door if you didn't do it. And that's the thing with meditation, right? You said something funny on Friday's show on the couch about how you haven't tried everything. Right. You know how many times I've had people tell me I've tried all the meditations and I can't do it. There is literally thousands of different meditations out there. So when somebody tells me they've tried meditation and it doesn't work, I just laugh. Like, come on, really?
No, you know what you should do is you should just do this.
I'm meditating right now.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, even with meditation, that's another misnomer, right? Like, people think meditation is like a, you're good at it or you're bad at it or something. Like, no, you either meditate or you don't. There is no try, as you always, you said. There is no try. You do or you don't. In meditation, that's the other thing. It's got this big mystical connotation to it, right? People think that when they think of meditation, they think of like these monks that can sit still for 4 days and just focus. No, dude. All meditation is let me shatter this myth right now for everybody. If you're watching this and you're out there thinking that meditation is this ultra secretive or this ultra, mystical art form, no, dude. It's just practice. That's all it is, man. It's just practice. All this stuff that we're talking about with detachment and our minds thinking this and wanting to do this and go all over the place and wondering this and filling in the narrative and thinking we know what this person's doing and jumping to conclude. Your mind wants to do all that. All meditation is learning to hear all that and ignore it and focus on one thing. And the only reason why you meditate isn't so you can tell people, hey, I'm a great meditator. I did it for 10 hours. No. You're meditating so when the real life situation happens, when you're out there in public and something takes place, you no longer are a victim to your every whim. You instead can hear and see what's happening, understand that your brain's wanting to go a certain way, and you say, you know what, I see what you're doing, right, but no, I'm going to go this way instead. That's it. Practice. That's all meditation is. And if you do it for 2 seconds a day, then that's great. Then do it for 4 seconds tomorrow, and just get better at it, and there you go.
So how much meditation do you think is going on with the soldiers at Arlington Cemetery or the British soldiers at Parliament, the ones that are just standing there?
Oh, I don't even know, man.
Because both those soldiers, whether the ones here, at Arlington, or the ones over there in England, they're unfazed.
Yeah, I don't know.
Weather doesn't even phase.
I don't know if I would call that meditation, if I would just call it straight up.
So I'm saying, how much meditation? That's what I'm asking. Like, how much meditation? How much do you think they're actually there, or like they're somewhere else, like in a different like? Do you think they use the process of meditation to be able to be so still for so long?
I don't know if
because it should be able to be useful. We got to do a show on meditation. Don't even answer me now. We'll do a whole show on meditation, and you got to give us some visuals of that as well.
Some visuals of meditation?
I'm telling you, visuals. I need visuals, bro. I'm very visual.
I don't know what a visual meditation. I know what the stereotypical vision is.
We'll talk. We'll talk about it off the air, and
sure.
And then by the time we do the show, we'll have some visuals.
Right on. Well, we are speaking of off the air. We're getting ready to run out of time. So let me you do your final thoughts. I'll do mine, and then for everybody who's watching this on Facebook, after the outro, we'll hang out for a few minutes and answer some questions or whatever, and then. Till next time. So let's hear what you got to say, man.
I'm going to keep mine fairly simple, especially since I'm not a Buddhist. So I'm not going to practice to understand detachment in the Buddhist sense and the true spirit of what the show is about. But what I will talk about is when I think of detachment, so that life can go in a healthy direction. What I'm just going to say is if you're holding on to something that's causing you some serious discomfort, and you're unable to let go of that discomfort, and you don't like the discomfort, you're not accepting it to be what it is, and therefore you're kind of just holding on to it, and here's the next year, and here's the next year, and you're still in the same situation, then maybe you ought to research detachment just a little bit more and find out more about its use in your life. And I think that if the Buddhist philosophy has sections in it which help you detach or helps you progress from sitting in that pain that you're in, then maybe you ought to look into it. But as far as what I'm thinking, I'll just say it's simple. Let that shit go, man. Just let that shit go. It's not helpful. It's counterproductive, and it's holding you back. You're basically stuck, and that's it.
Right on. You heard it here first, kids. So yeah, I'm going to echo a lot of that same sentiment. Normally, once again, this is our 3 tips section, where I kind of give you guys some sort of an action plan to get started or to apply some of these things. So the 3 things that I have here are pretty basic, just a rehashing. So the first one is understand that there is a difference, man. There's a difference between detached to outcomes and indifferent to outcomes. Indifference would basically be, I don't really care. Either one or the other doesn't bother me. I'm good to go. Whereas detachment means, yes, I very much care, but I'm okay with any outcome. That's a difference. I myself am detached to several things. I'm detached from what I had from dinner tonight. However, I do care. Do not put cat poop in front of me and expect me to eat it. I care. However, I'm indifferent to if it's burger or pasta, whatever. I mean, it is what it is. I'm going to eat it. Second one is you can dream. You can dream. You can aspire, and I think everybody should. Buddhist or not, man, dream. Have aspirations. Have goals. Have benchmarks in your life. Have things that you strive to achieve. There's nothing wrong with that. Which leads me to the third one, and the third one is, but your happiness shouldn't depend on those outcomes coming true, essentially. Your definition of success should be malleable. It should be flexible. It shouldn't be so rigid that there is only one definition of success and that's it. Because you might find yourself in some very humbling moments where you have to admit to yourself that you still feel successful, you still did good things, but it didn't turn out exactly the way you envisioned it. And that is literally the definition of success in my eyes. Being able to still progress, being able to still achieve things, and being flexible enough to understand that it's not going to work out exactly the way you thought it would. Too many times that we place our happiness or our ability to be happy on specific outcomes. And when those specific things don't happen the way we think they should, well, then I can't be happy and I'm upset and I'm depressed and whatever it may be. And I think that's where the suffering starts to take place. That's where the unskillfulness happens. So, anyways, thank you guys for tuning in. I think you already heard what next week's show is going to be about. We're going to go ahead and talk about some celebrity Buddhists out there and kind of talk about some of their characteristics. So if you know anybody, feel free to drop a name or two in our messages or tag us or something like that so we can add to our list, and be sure to tune in next week. Once again, you can follow us on social media. I'm at the Dharma Guy. He is at the Dope Doctor. We are at WPSN99. And why don't you go ahead and follow Out Now Matters More while you're at it. You want to watch our old videos? YouTube.com/Dharma Time. Or you can also do YouTube.com/The Couch Live and hear us talk about drug and alcohol recovery, which will be coming up this Friday at 12 o'clock. Same channel, same place. Now that you know better, do better, everybody. Peace. Are you still here? What are you doing? I told you, go do better.